everyone. Welcome to our next series of Corona Mama Conversations. Today, we are here with Dr. Tiffini Billingsley.
Hi.
She is a local pediatrician here in the Atlanta area, and we're just going to be having a conversation with her today on some basics about Corona, some best practices, and just what's going on, what's the latest and greatest. So, Tiffini, why don't you start off a little bit by telling us about yourself, your practice?
Okay. Well, I am a native of Atlanta, Georgia. I went to undergrad at UNC Chapel Hill and then did my medical school and residency at Morehouse School of Medicine. I completed my residency, obviously, in pediatrics. I've been in private practice now pretty much since I left residency, but 5 years ago decided to open my own practice, Premier Pediatric Associates. So we actually celebrated 5 years back in January, and we've been doing well. We're located in Smyrna, Georgia, so things have been great.
Well, good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I know some very interesting times we have currently. Tell us a little about what things are looking like currently in the world of pediatrics as it relates to the coronavirus.
Great question. So, really with the big topics right now for us, and I'm sure we'll get to this, really has a lot to do with kids returning to school. We've already started to get a lot of questions around even kids returning to daycare and what that looks like for parents. As it relates specifically to COVID-19 in children, obviously, I'm sure many have heard that, typically it is going to be a mild illness and that children just aren't transmitting it as frequently as we're seeing in adults. Having said that, there's just still not enough information that we have in terms of how it looks in children. So there's still a lot to be learned, which of course is kind of the ongoing thing for COVID-19 just in general for patients. But in pediatrics, obviously, we've talked about the multi-system inflammatory syndrome. And so that's been a big thing the earlier part of this summer as we were starting to see more kids with that. But generally speaking, it has still been a pretty mild illness in a lot of patients. And so for the most part, our kids do okay. I think our families just struggle with, though, do they send them to school? Do they go to daycare? What does it look like if it is that they're asymptomatic? Well, what does it look like if grandma typically takes care of them? When do they need to get tested? When shouldn't they get tested? Is that a scenario? So that's been a lot of it. We get tons of calls about, should my child get tested, or I want my child to get tested, and where exactly should that happen? And at what point does my child need to be quarantined? I mean, they have allergies constantly throughout the year, so they're coughing and sneezing all the time. So do I need to do something different right now because of that? So that's in large part what I'm seeing on a day-to-day basis is just the questions around what do I do?
Sure. Now, what are the answers to some of those questions in the sense of, when should a child be tested?
So great question. The reality is there are no guidelines, at least as of today. I think it's July 26th,
Yes.
Sunday, July 26th
Mhm.
at 6:57. There are actually no specific guidelines recommending that children get tested. Having said that, I do have a lot of daycares as of right now, and I'm sure it's going to come up with schools as they look to start back that are actually requiring that kids have a negative test before either starting or returning if by some chance they were asked to leave due to a possible exposure at the daycare. So a lot of schools are, daycares if you will, are requiring that, as well as, again, I'm sure that there will be some schools as well. So in that scenario, I'd say go ahead and get tested because I wouldn't want that to be the reason that keeps kids out of whatever childcare they're actually needing as it relates to daycare, and then school for that matter if parents have decided to return. Other scenarios, I would say, if you're planning on visiting high-risk populations, so someone that is immunocompromised or elderly grandparents, that may be a scenario where it at least should be considered. If you're coming back from traveling on an airplane, again, possibly considering it in those scenarios, but otherwise there are no specific guidelines actually suggesting that kids be tested for any specific reason.
Sure. And that being said, and understanding that children oftentimes, fall ill unexpectedly for
Mhm.
whatever reason because they've been in contact with other children. They're very often carriers of various viruses and illnesses. What are
Mhm.
some of the best practices for parents, to follow these days to protect their children and keep them safe, besides the basics of, isolation?
Right, great question. So we really try to encourage kids who are 2 and up really being able to wear the face mask. Now, obviously, with my younger children, those, in that 2 to 5 age range, it's going to be a little more difficult to keep it on, but it is recommended for kids 2 and up to wear a face mask. That is going to be probably the big thing that is making a huge difference in minimizing the spread of this disease just in general. So really trying to encourage children to wear the face mask and making sure they even know how to put it on appropriately.
Right.
Frequently, especially for children, they're touching everything. And so they're touching then the outside of the mask, the inside of the mask, now it's contaminated. So putting the mask on for your child and or teaching them how to do it appropriately themselves is really key. And then obviously keeping their hands out of their face. Now, again, this is really difficult with especially your smaller children.
Yeah.
And so the frequent hand washing, teaching them how to wash their hands, having hand sanitizer available so that you can quickly get their hands as clean as possible when you know that they've been touching other things, making sure that you're keeping high surfaces, frequently touched surfaces well clean will be huge as well. And then making sure that we are practicing the 6 feet of social distancing and beyond when possible. Doing those things are going to really be important to help minimize our children getting the illness and then obviously spreading it to others.
Yeah. So, just as a side question, I know
Mhm.
this may come up quite a bit when you're speaking specifically about keeping the hand sanitizer and when you're
Mhm.
dealing with the young children. What do you say to the parents who are concerned about the younger children who frequently put their hands in their mouth, using hand sanitizer and then them having to put, their hand in the mouth? How safe is that?
Right. So you do want to be very cautious in doing that because, if you go to wipe their hands off and then they're immediately putting their hands right into their mouths, then yes, one is not helping at all, right? Because now they're just kind of licking off their hands and now they're going to go
Yeah.
contaminate them again. So you do want to be as cautious as possible because a lot of it then is, okay, we got to keep our hands away from our mouths. Now,
Yeah.
what I encourage my families to do when possible, I prefer actually washing hands with soap and water.
Yeah.
That I think that is the best way to keep your hands clean. I then suggest having the hand sanitizer when that option is just not available to you. So in my mind is you're actually not using it the hand sanitizer as frequently, again, especially with the younger ones. If at all possible, you're really focusing on using soap and water to help minimize, again, them actually getting this alcohol in their mouth frequently and therefore it not really helping.
Okay. Talk to us a little bit about what your practice looks like these days. What types of accommodations are you making to help, prevent the spread and things like that?
So things have gotten very interesting in my office, to say the least. And I've been very grateful for my families because everyone has just, for the most part, adapted pretty easily. But do screening questions. We provide screening questions at the moment of your even scheduling an appointment.
Hmm.
When families arrive, they actually get a text message about 20 minutes before their appointment, asking them to notify us when they arrive via text message. So after we receive that message, we ensure that a room is available for them. We've eliminated our waiting room. So when they get that message back, that is their cue to actually enter the office. When they come into the building at our front door, they're then asked a series of questions again. And we are actually also doing temperature checks, not just of our children, but also of our parents now, so that we can just know where everybody stands as they're looking to enter. Now, obviously, we take care of sick patients, right?
Right.
So if you were to have a fever, it would just mean that you're coming through a different entrance than the primary entrance of our office. But we're really looking to screen. Now, if we have parents who have possibly a fever, there is a process for us trying to see, because when it's 95 degrees outside, it's possible that you're just going to be a little warmer,
Right.
especially when using a contactless thermometer. So we want to give you a minute to kind of cool off. But then if you're still showing signs of fever, then our goal is really trying to make sure we're isolating that family in a particular room, and they are to leave right out of our office as well.
Right.
We have certain rooms that are just used for our well visits, certain rooms for our sick visits. Now, it is possible that the well visit that we asked all the questions, then they get in the room and we get a slightly different story. If that patient is sick, then that room is no longer a well visit room. So we actually switch it over to a sick room, and it's no longer to be used as a well visit room. So again, we really look to split up our visits, but one of the things that's been helpful is we actually are doing our well visits and sick visits at different times of the day. So in the mornings and early part of the afternoon, we're seeing well visits, and the latter part of the afternoon, it's sick visits. Now that can get tricky, because if you wake up in the morning, your child is sick, you're then trying to figure out, okay, what do I do until possibly 3 o'clock? So we tell our parents, definitely call us if we need to try to help figure something out for them, if nothing else but giving them suggestions of what to do to tie their child over until that appointment time, then we're doing that. If it seems to be something that's more urgent, then we are making sure we're referring them to the appropriate place if necessary. But we're really trying to be diligent about minimizing any potential spread in our office. And then our staff being in the appropriate PPE. PPE has been hard to come by, but thankfully, I do feel like our office is well prepared right now to make sure that we are we're in the appropriate PPE when we're actually seeing patients.
Sure.
So a lot of that has been the big change, and
Hmm.
then the scheduling changes has been huge. But again, our families have been adjusting. Cleaning, I was already OCD about my office
Right.
prior to COVID. So a lot of that didn't change for us, but I am looking at other technologies around cleaning. They have some UV lights now that you can have available, as I know cleaning supplies are going to become even more difficult to come by as the months progress. So I'm looking at other forms of technology that we can use to keep the office well cleaned.
Sure. And have you had any particular troubles obtaining and maintaining PPE, or how's that process
Yes, so
been?
it has been quite a journey with a lot of the medical supply vendors, should I say, supply
Sure.
vendors that we use. I'm in constant communication with them. One in particular, I've actually just told him there's certain things that I'm like, just order it as soon as it is available. You don't need to wait on an okay from me. Please just order it as soon as it comes available. And then I have been fortunate to get some donations from various organizations and individuals that I know in the healthcare community. So fortunately, I have been able to acquire some N95s and other PPE that others may be having a difficult time acquiring as of right now. So very thankful, but also teaching my staff about how we go about properly caring for our PPE so
Yeah.
that we can hopefully hold on to it. So it may mean us having to do an N95 with a surgical mask on top so that we can protect that mask so
Right.
that it can be used again. So that's been a large part of it as well, educating my staff on how we go about maintaining the PPE so that, again, as things become more scarce with time, we still have what we need to care for patients.
Yeah. Gone are the days of, wearing a mask and just ripping it off and
And
tossing it
throwing
in
it
the
away.
trash. I
Yes.
mean, or,
Yes.
so very interesting, times that we're living in, the
Mhm.
change of just basic day-to-day life and work
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
physician,
It is, even sitting there, I was discussing with my other physician in the office a few days ago, just this, how we're practicing medicine now is so different. And, I had on, of course, the gown and my goggles and the double mask. And I'm like that the entire day.
Yeah.
And, for my patients, I recognize some of my interaction with my infants and toddlers has been them being able to see my face and just laugh and smile. And so now I'm having to try to use the inflection in my voice because they can't see me,
Yeah.
and so it's just very different from what we were trained to do, but everyone keeps saying new norm. I think this is just the norm now. And,
Yeah.
I think if we treat it that way and quit anticipating it changing back to the way it was, then it may be a little easier to adjust to.
Right.
Hopefully that day will come,
Yeah.
but for now, here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
definitely think there's something to the mask usage when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to interacting with patients. I think there will definitely, even when the pandemic calms down, I think there'll be a certain, aspect of that may, remain,
Continue.
you know,
Yep. I
in
completely
patient
agree.
care. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. I know for us, another thing, I guess, if you will, that's changed, you have to have on the mask when you come into the office.
Yeah.
It's just, I have to ensure that we're protecting my staff so that we're there to even see the patients. And so, there are moments where we have to remind parents, let's make sure we get the mask in the right place.
Yeah.
But everybody's also trying to, if you're not used to doing something constantly throughout the day, you're just wanting a moment to breathe,
Yeah.
but us doing that, I think, makes a huge difference in protecting each other. So that's probably been one of the other big changes, but everybody seems to be adjusting because it's something that we're all having to do.
Right.
Yeah.
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 So what about even just kind of in your personal life? Tell us, a couple of things that, may
Mm.
have, what are some new norms for you as it pertains to just Tiffini?
Yeah, so I used to see my family is actually here in Atlanta,
Mm.
and I'm very fortunate to still have my grandmother around, and whom I talk to pretty much every day. But I've seen them maybe 2 or 3 times since everything started. I used to see them probably at least on a weekly basis, and my mom and I are super close, and she actually was working in my office, and she no longer is. So
Yeah.
the day-to-day interaction she and I used to have is no longer there. And so it's definitely been a challenge. I don't get a chance to see my siblings as much as I used to. So again, just not getting a chance to interact with family and friends for that matter as much as I used to. I recognize that I'm in a high risk job. And so for that reason, I have to make sure I'm very cautious in how I'm interacting with my family and friends. And so really trying to find those moments where I can just utilize Zoom or doing something that allows me, if it is just driving by my parents' home to wave, little things to try to figure out how I can still connect. But that's probably been one of the bigger adjustments. And then with everything happening with the office and the things that are changing with this on a day-to-day basis, and needing to get the PPP loan and looking at
Right.
different things that have come up, I'm having to try to find some balance of having personal time versus constantly working on what's the next thing that we're dealing with as it relates to this pandemic. So it's probably been more of a challenge than anything of trying to get some personal time as well. But I'm figuring it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Um,
How about you?
Oh, it's a very interesting time.
Yeah.
For those if I hadn't mentioned it already, Dr. Billingsley is our pediatrician for our baby who is now 5.5 months old, and so it's
And adorable.
thanks. And so yeah, we're working through some of those same questions now with childcare. We've been fortunate, with my husband and my schedule thus far to really be able to juggle taking care of her at home. But as things are ramping up, we're working on, figuring out what's the best case scenario for us, for
Mhm.
childcare. Even
Mhm.
some of those questions like, is it safe for an infant to go to early childhood care facility, or whether or not a nanny is the best case scenario. But either way, there's just so many things you can't control. People
Mhm.
outside, once they're outside of caring for your child, you hope that they're following the guidelines of wearing a mask and
Yeah.
social
Yeah.
distancing. But
You just
once
don't
they're
know.
outside of, that role of childcare, you can't control that. And so,
Right.
that's difficult. But everybody's healthy thus far, and we're maintaining, and that's all we
Good.
can do. A lot of
That's it.
home improvements to be able to enjoy the home better.
Yes. Yes.
That's what
Yes.
we've been working on actually currently. So,
Okay.
yeah, Yep.
Awesome.
So one thing I do want to switch gears just slightly,
Hmm.
just because it is, front of mind for a lot of people. I just am curious as to, in the current light of the social unrest that's going on, a lot of focus on the inequalities in healthcare when it comes to COVID and just various other medical comorbidities with regard to police brutality and things like that. Have you had
Hmm.
any special situation of parents and children that have come to you in need for, any special social services or just even discussions or, offletting of some of the stressors that have come through this?
Yeah. So I have had, and it's probably been more of some of my moms with, for the most part, honestly, younger or sometimes newborn baby boys, and frequently with smaller children, and then some with that are older, closer to the adolescent age. For them, it's been in large part trying to balance everything, what's going on from the pandemic standpoint, with kids not maybe getting a chance to interact with their friends as frequently, and yet getting all of these images and things that are going on with things socially within our communities, and protests and everything that are happening. And so I have had some parents inquiring about, do you think therapy or something is needed right now? And just in helping kids adjust to everything. And so I have had, a few referrals around that. One of the things I've been, and then for others, it's just been needing a moment to vent, you know. All of this started to happen, Dr. B, and I just had this little boy, and it's just got me thinking about so many different things, and
Right.
and this world that I brought my child into, and thinking through all of that. And so a lot of what I try to share with my families is really being present in the moment, especially for those moms with the little ones. Let's focus on your baby eating well today. Let's focus on,
Yeah.
you're getting through your moments of nursing or giving the bottle, or, getting your 2 hours of sleep. Being present in those things that we can control, because there's so many things that we can't. And I think sometimes when you're functioning so much in the things that you can't control, it just
Right.
yields to a lot of anxiety and, discomfort, and really unhappiness when you're focused just in that space. I think
Hmm.
we have to be very realistic about the world that we're in and what are the things that we can practically do, but really being present in the moment of looking at what are the things that are good, what
Yeah.
are the things that I can do something about right now, what small part, if I'm looking to assist in the injustices that are happening in this world, what are the things that I can do, and not just staying in the space of what I can't do or what is happening. And so that's what I really try to, I guess, share with my families. And then those who are looking to have some additional assistance for their children in navigating through this thing, and this thing being everything, right? The
Right.
injustices of the world, this pandemic that we're going through, not being able to go to school, having to learn online when I've recognized that's just not the way that I learn. When
Right.
I'm navigating through all of those things, I think can be difficult, obviously for children, because it's difficult for us. And
Yeah.
so, yes, I have had more referrals, that we have made along those lines. But, for a lot of my families, they're starting to adjust to, okay, this is where we are. And now let me try to get my plan together of how I exist in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely asking a lot of children these days, and requiring a lot of resilience from them
Hmm.
that some of us don't even have ourselves as adults.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so really, I think, just as you said, being in the moment, focusing on the things you can control,
Hmm.
focusing on the positive. One of the
Hmm.
things I wonder about, with my little one, because unfortunately she has not been able to meet a lot of my friends and family. A
Yeah.
lot of my family's back in Florida.
Right.
She's gonna think everybody's this big because we're FaceTiming and
It's
Zooming and doing
timing.
all that stuff.
Right.
And so she's not gonna have a real concept of what humans are like, I feel sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
But you do what you got to do, what's safe in the moment, and you deal with things as they come, and
As they come. Hmm.
happy that
Hmm.
they're healthy and here with you, and just love them and be there for them as best we can.
Exactly. It's like that, again, that mind switch. What am I going to choose to focus on? Because you're right. There is Okay, I want her to know that people are much larger than this, and or if she were to see her aunt out somewhere as she gets older, recognizing, oh, that's my aunt,
Right.
and and that comes with exposure over time of being able to see someone and see their face,
Yeah.
but that will come. We'll figure out, how we ensure that those things are happening for children. It's just that it'll be a delay in how we get to that point. Just doesn't mean that it won't happen. It's just a delay as to how we get there.
Yeah.
But then to your point, but what can I do now? Well, if I see this face on Zoom frequently enough, then that means something too, right? And there will be some concept of size of people because she would have been looking at her mom and dad, right?
Right.
So again, trying to find those silver linings or those, again, those things that you can control and do
Yeah.
something about. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for our continued editions of Corona Mama Conversations. Dr. Tiffini
Absolutely.
Billingsley.
Hello, I'm so happy I got a chance to join with you guys. Our website is www.ppa4kids.com. So www.ppa4kids.com. You can like us on Facebook, and we're also on Twitter and Instagram at PPA for Kids.
Any final advice for any kids or families today?
I just say, again, take it one day at a time. I will say specifically as it relates to school, daycare, all of those things. One of the things I've also been telling my families, your children need to eat. They need a roof over their heads. So when you're making that decision about, childcare and those kinds of things, families have, if you have to work, don't look at it as it being a disadvantage. Is it being a big deal for you that you're not able to, that you're forced with choosing the child care and just what that option is going to be, and not having the option of between childcare and being home because you recognize you have to work. So if we know we've got to work and therefore I've got to do a childcare option, now let's just function in that and figure out now what is the best option there. And as you go about looking for that option, trying to make sure you're looking for something that does ascribe to a lot of the guidelines that have been put in place towards protecting your child. And likewise for school, if you're in a county where online is going to be the thing you have to do, or even if you have the option, recognize doing the best you can, try to get the resources that you can for your child, but function in the space of looking at what you can do and not be focused on what you can't do and what you can't control. And if you can do that, then I think the journey over these next 6 to 9+ months, which I think is going to be a difficult one, but I think it'll be easier if you can just focus on what you can do and not on what you can't.
Perfect. Great advice.
Okay. All righty.
Well,
thanks for having me.
No problem. Thanks for joining us. And you can follow us on Twitter at CoronaMama1. That's Corona Mama and the number 1. And find our website at corona-mamas.com. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.